What you're seeing play out in front of your screen is just a very generic scenario of an India-Pakistan nuclear war. I just posted a video recently about such possible scenarios. This one, they're just firing at each other. Scenario is not important. This is really just a backdrop to the subject matter of this video, and it's why is India and Pakistan probably the biggest risk for an actual crossing the threshold to a nuclear escalation in the world right now. Not just right now because of, but as a kind of a standard baseline. And I'm kind of going to go into a couple of those reasons. But if you've been following the recent news, there was the terror attack where the Hindu males were targeted. And then most recently, India made some airstrikes on Pakistan. Pakistan retaliated with air engagement. And it seems confirmed by most sources outside of India that at least one Rafale was shot down, possibly two, and a total of 5 fighter jets were shot down, or 4 and a drone, I believe, is what Pakistan is claiming. They just released some footage, and if so, it may have been one of the biggest air-to-air engagements in quite some time, involving over 200 fighters. And that brings up a whole other list of things, like sounds like potentially that the Chinese the J-10, not the J-20. J-20 is their 5th gen stealth, but the J-10 was used with the PL-15 air-to-air missile, which is a very long-range air-to-air missile, and that those were used to engage and shoot down the Rafale. Be the first time domestically produced Chinese aircraft was used in actual military conflict. So brings a whole new list of things. Chinese versus Western fighters. Details are scarce. A lot of people have made their own conclusions based on that. Probably jumping the gun, but you have the pro-Chinese crowd, the anti-Chinese crowd, either one throwing out stuff about COPE, all this stuff. It's ridiculous. Avoid defense-related stuff by and large, unless you're better off just banging your head against the wall, especially like some of the Reddit, less credible defense sites, stuff like that. There are some good people, by the way, really good PLA watchers, stuff like that, but there's a lot of crap. So anyways, with these heightened escalations, it always brings up because these are two nuclear armed countries, and they have a very close parity of nuclear forces. Kind of went into that in the last video. You want to check it out. Actual numbers. It seems to be about 180-ish warheads. They are of the mostly lower yield variety. So 10, 15 kiloton. Similar in strength to the weapons used in World War II with the atomic bombs. To give a frame of reference, India seems to have at least a triad of some sort. They believe to have nuclear ballistic subs with sub-launch ballistic missiles and air and mobile launchers, Pakistan mobile and air launchers. I believe they do not have a credible sea-based weapon. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the point isn't really their armament, so to speak. And you see here this mutual engagement. If they were to strike at the same time, you're looking 15 million Pakistan deaths, 10 million Indian deaths. Population-wise, India is much larger than Pakistan, so the percentage-wise would always favor India as far as having a lower percentage of their people killed because of that. But again, that's not really the point of this. The point is why. Well, first, you have two nuclear-armed nations that share a border, have a disputed region, have a history of conflict going back to at least 1947 with the British parishioning of what they consider mostly Islamic and mostly Hindu-based. Of course, there is obviously a sizable Muslim population in India, and this is a really high-level knuckle-dragger version. If you want to learn more about that, look at other videos. There's a ton of good ones. I can put some recommendations on the comments if you want to ask. But so they share this border. They're both nuclear armed with a very close parity. So of course you say, well, there are some small disputed areas between India and China, and they're obviously geopolitical issues. You have the country with the largest population and the second largest population, with China and India respectively. Militarily wise, they're not really close to a parity, and it's shown, at least with the J-10, that they have an ability to at least be in a competitive state on their airframes, if not superior. But say, even if they weren't, say the Rafael could engage the J-20, which is a more advanced version of the J-10, the numbers favor China, but also their rate of production favors China. So even if they were able to kill them 10 to 100 ratio, 1 to 10 ratio, China would still be able to outproduce and, in effect, win any type of kind of air conflict like that. So as a competitive sense, they have two smallish border regions, which are not, it's not really a serious conflict, not as to the same level as Pakistan and India. You have the religious aspect there. And of course, now things have heated up again. But that's not it, right? There are other aspects to this. I don't think I'm going to have any. Yeah. These are all fired off. Let me throw something down here. I'm going to add let me place a unit. So on the Pakistan side, surface units, this is where I'm pulling from. So I'm going to grab a mobile base, and let's grab this. So let's put this down here, plop this bad boy here. Target. And let me just target New Delhi. Done. Done. And so I'm not going to do this on a 1-to-1 speed because I don't want the video to take forever, but I'm going to do a 10-to-1 speed. So decision to launch, and then we'll see from decision to launch and strike time. So we're about 3 minutes past 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. Hopefully I didn't mess this up. It should be doing it. So about 3 minutes has passed so far. So we're about 7 minutes. They're actually firing. This is time for mobile launchers. Now, again, this would be about the time they're going to detect it. So we'll start the clock here. So 7 minutes from giving the issue to launch to launch. Let's count here. So we're about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Warhead's breaking off. Already striking. 5 minutes from launch to strike time. First warhead's dropping. So what does that mean? If a launch is detected from one side or the other, there's going to be very little time for them to be able to make a decision from the point that the enemy launches, and it's going to be striking. So how's that a reference? Let's look at United States. Let me just throw something down here. Unit placement. Let's just go. United States of Moscow. Execute. Let's go here. And we'll take a look on the same thing. We're at 17 after 3 o'clock. So already starting to launch pretty quickly. So there, Russia's early warning radars, spies on the ground, any number of sources. Hey, the Americans have launched. I'll go a little faster on this one just as a time factor. Okay, slow it down a little bit. So 30 minutes has passed now. 30 minutes, potential launch detection, if everything's working right, to strike time. And it hasn't even struck yet. So we're looking at, let's see here. About 33 minutes. 33 minutes flight time. You say, okay, well, what about a sub? So let's just drop let's do a unit placement. And we'll do the opposite here. We'll do let's do Russia. Do a sub base. Let's do the Delta 5, and I'm gonna drop it right here. And then I'm gonna be bold, and I'm gonna set a location. Let's say they tried to polarized cap. Whoa. There. Target. So in subs, you can get closer to the enemy. So in theory, you could strike sooner. Let's go Washington. Let's just go. Done. Let's hit it. So we're at 50 after 3, or 10 till 4. Just going to go fast time. Okay, launch detected, 5 minutes. So let's see. It's going to be quicker than the ICBM. Slowing it down a little bit. So we're already at 20 minutes. So even with an advanced positioning from launch time, and that's provided the United States doesn't intercept some communication, something that says, hey, they're going to be launching. We're getting almost 25 minutes. 23 minutes. So again, that comparison, 23 minutes from launch detection to strike. And this is a very basic high level. I could use a different simulator to get more in depth, but it's just give you an idea. That's the danger behind this conflict. There's going to be very little time between a launch and the other side having to decide what their reaction is going to be. And what's the situation at the time? Have they dispersed their own nuclear forces? So are these mobile launchers dispersed out? Are they still stored in bases that can be targeted? Is the launch going to be against population, cities, or military targets? All kinds of questions can impact that. So like this demo I did earlier with those losses, that was a mix of military targets and city population attacks. Had it been strictly dedicated to attacking the population centers, casualties would have been much higher. Some of these bases are in more remote areas, and they don't model deployed soldiers in those bases. So it kind of, again, if there's, say, a brigade stationed at that base, 5,000, 6,000, whatever personnel, it wouldn't necessarily model that factor into it. Unfortunately, in nuclear conflict, especially when you have a few missiles lobbing around, 5,000 isn't a huge factor one way or the other, unfortunately. But that's the case. So very little time from launch to strike. They're both nuclear armed, and they both have almost, a parity of forces. So sometimes it may, it's very unlikely Great Britain is going to decide to make a nuclear strike on its own accord against Russia. The amount of nuclear forces that Great Britain has, or United Kingdom, I should say, versus Russia is hugely disproportionate. You can even say that's why China is going through a nuclear buildup to get it closer to parity with the United States versus what they've maintained for a long time, which may be considered a minimum deterrent level, similar to a United Kingdom or France. Now they are building up their forces quite a bit. But India and Pakistan have a rough parity and stuff. Again, one side doesn't have a decisive advantage. On a military conflict, population-wise, India is a much larger population. Military-wise, we've seen in this most recent engagement, there may not be a clear-cut answer as far as one side has a superiority in a air battle. It's unlikely, probable to see any large-scale land battles, very rough terrain and stuff, and I don't think either side has any desire to invade the other country. So this would be a primarily air and missile battle, kind of like an engagement we saw the other day. So tremendous risk involved in that. This is what I consider probably like one of the biggest flashpoints because of that. There's not going to be a lot of time. What if there's a false detection? There's not a lot of time to figure out if it's real or fake because you've only got a few minutes from launch to reaction versus an engagement between Russia and the United States. Unless our subs get very, very close, and they can get very close without attracting the attention of the opposing sides, attack subs, and defense systems, that launch time to strike is going to be substantially longer. Not a long time, substantially longer. If you're looking at 25 to 30 minutes versus 5 minutes, 5 to 6 times greater to make an educated decision, potentially determine if it's a false flag or if it's real. So, very dangerous situation everyone's in. Is it end of the world? 180 warheads, 15 kilotons. Even if Russia and the United States start lobbing nuclear missiles at each other, it's not the end of the world. Humanity, as we know, it would be drastically altered. Russia and the United States, would they continue to exist as functioning countries? What would the ecological fallout? There's a ton of questions involved in that. Those questions shrink tremendously when you have a much lower deployed nuclear warhead sizes, which much lower warhead yields. It'd still be extremely devastating on a scale we haven't seen that many casualties under that short a time period. A lot of strong feelings on either sides of this equation, and from people that live in other countries, like United Kingdom keeps speaking about, they have a large Indian and Pakistan population. So this really affects a lot of people. I work with or around people of both, backgrounds and stuff, and tremendous people, right? But it's, obviously there's long-standing tensions here. You can talk about fallout from colonialism, stuff like that, and, prior things before, the British East India Company got involved, and then later direct rule, but, prior empires and conquerors. A lot of history there that I'm not going to cover in a 16-minute video or 18-minute video, and quite frankly, I'm not an expert, so it's not my place to talk about. But hopefully this, to people that aren't as familiar with the conflict, gives an idea why this is such a danger to spiral out of control, because of both being nuclear armed, both having rough side, similar forces in such a short time period, just sharing that border. So thanks, everybody. Hope you learned something from the video. Don't want to say enjoy it because there's nothing enjoyable about when these scenarios could be, come closer from hypothetical to reality. So there's nothing enjoyable about that. But I hope you learned something about it and that cooler heads prevail. So thanks.